This is a COVID-19 policy regulating McKenna Law Firm, Administrator 704 East Olive, Mr. McKenna Law Firm, COVID-19 policy regulation and services applied administration office, and also Mr. McKenna Law Firm and his COVID-19 policy regulations of the executive order, and this has been implemented Mr. McKenna Law Firm office at 509, and this is the McKenna Law office at 709, and this is John Luke McKinnon, WSBA is 13294, and then Mr. McKinnon has this COVID-19 Policy Regulation and Service Center, the Department of the License Department here in Olympia, Washington, which is Moses Lake, Washington. They're carrying the Executive Order in the Administration Office and the exemplary of Secretary of Envelope and Services in the Administration of COVID-19 Policy Regulation, and also the Washington State Patrol Office at the SOS Wild Gov Corps in Olympia, Washington, has an executive order in the Department of DOL. You got to work with the Secretary of State, Municipal, and the Supreme Justice Department. Also work for the Superior Court and also Mr. Andy Miller, Washington State Prosecutor, Benton County Justice Department, which is the COVID-19 Policy and McKenna Law Office, because the signatures, confirmations, the joints on agent-to-agent signature and electronic signature agent, door-to-door, and also systematic FedEx priority mail, air-to-air, ground-to-ground, ground-to-ground, air-to-air, ground-to-ground, door-to-door, and also straight to the curbside service for the brand new laptop, brand new furniture, brand new Microsoft company and services, and the Windows 11 and the Windows 12, which will be DICS, an accessory of Generation 10, 11. And Generation 10, 11 is a high-speed processor for your laptops and are connected to your export unlimited devices, which is Apple, Microsoft, and the Windows accessory played for the Apple, and also Apple apps, and also Microsoft Windows 10, 11 apps that are attached to the services and administration of COVID-19, the Washington Bar Association, the administration of COVID-19 policy regulations at the Law Firm Administration Office, the COVID-19 policy regulation carrying exemplary order at the Administration Office of the COVID-19 policy regulation, the Service Center for the Vista Utility Bill, the Grant County Utility Bill, the UBI number, the City Hall ordinances for jewelry store, Miller's Jewelry Store. Todd Levette is a business owner at the Miller's Jewelry Store in Moses Lake, Washington. And also the City Hall. In City Hall, they have a Class A uniform and Hearst from Rhonda Kaiser's Funeral Home at 831 Pioneer. And Rhonda Kaiser's Funeral Home has J. Mueller's Funeral Home in Kennewick, Washington. And that's 1401 South Union, Kennewick, Washington. And that service they have in applying the COVID-19 policy. We had to see the background of the two luminous lights attached to the McKenna Law Firm Administrative COVID-19 policy regulation. Now, McKenna Law Firm office has this COVID-19 policy regulations. You got to work with the municipal district and also the Supreme Justice Department, and that is 9 seats of the Supreme Justice, Mr. Clarence and Mr. Tom Lett, Mrs. Amy, and also don't forget Mr. Kavanaugh. And now Brent and then Kavanaugh and his services the implemented of the Moses Lake emblem, the Moses Lake Microsoft Company emblem, and also Bill Gates Foundation 83 in Medina, Seattle, Washington, and also the services the importing the fishing license, the game, the federal game, duck license, and also the shotgun shells, also the full automatic ordinances by the U.S. Marshal's Office at 725 Jadwin. And that's Richland Senator Patty Mary Mrs. Cantwell office that has a income to society, the Department's license, abstract record and services applying the COVID-19, proving that the fact you have a driver's license, you have a record, and you have no criminal activities and service, you have no DUIs, DWIs, or no kind of income to society of any of the services applying the COVID-19 since the Richland City Hall, Kennewick City Hall, Moses City Hall has this implemented UBI number 602-720-979 and the Washington Bar Association and McKenna Law Firm and COVID-19 Policy Regulation Service Center. Now this applying the law firm, McKenna Law Firm, that is the McKenna Law Firm, and that McKenna Law Firm carries a executive order. That's 13294. Mr. McKenna Law Firm in Moses Lake, Washington at 98823 Moses Lake, Washington. And that's Rhonda Kaiser's Funeral Home, and that's the COVID-19 Policy Regulation McKenna Law Office, Administration of COVID-19. And Mrs. J. Mueller and also Ron Kaiser's Funeral Home carrying the COVID-19. You notice the typical the local services for the Generation 10, Generation X, the COVID-19 Secretary of Services and SOS Gov Corps, Mrs. Kim Wayman. These envelopes contain ballot forms, election campaigns. The USPS prior to mail and FedEx has a confirmation agent signature for electronic signature, and also agent signature. And there's Josie Delvin, Jerome Delvin. There's Haley from Nancy Pelosa's office, which is Josie Delvin. And Nancy Pelosi also has a main office in Hungary, and then Hungary has a San Luis Obispo office. They have a Senate office, and Josie Delvin and Jerome Delvin has a office here in Benton County Justice Department. And this is Haley M. Luna at San Luis Obispo. She's Secretary of State, and she runs the accounting office. Josie Delvin and Jerome Delvin are the commissioners, and they run accounting office and ballot form service. Secretary of State Kim Wayman, she runs a Mr. Steve Hobbs. Secretary Curran moved on and carried a COVID-19 policy regulations because of Felix Barela has implemented, and she was selected services by Felix Barela by and that's Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington State. And also there's Governor Locke, governor of Washington State, and also the services of other governors in the past histories that carry the executive order of the Secretary of State, SOS Gov Corps. Now, here in Secretary of State, the service applying the COVID-19 policy regulation of the sealing of the envelopes, and also the certification USP, primary FedEx, US air to air, ground to ground, ground to ground, air to air to ground, door to door. And also the service applying the Certificate of Ownership and Services of License Department, and the UBI number 602720979, and the COVID-19 sealing the document of each document, and dating of the document January, February of 2022, and there's, of course, November of 2021, and then there's January, February 8th of 2022, and then also the applying the COVID-19 policy regulations to its utmost fittest, applying the official stamp certification of confidential services for the election presidential campaign, and the president's campaign carrying the COVID-19 policy regulation, Mr. McKenna Law Firm at John Luke McKenna Law Office, and John Luke is WSBA 13294. Mr. Schultz Tower Wallace is 33509 at 56 East Street. George Washington House, number 42. We got 56 pages we're submitting on Facebook. We're submitting everything at DH, CPS, and just signing and emitting the COVID-19 policy regulation, policy screening process to the Donald Trump's executive order, effectively at the Department of Licensing, coming to live. That URL is Andy Miller at CBN. That's Mr. McKenna and John Luke McKenna, WSB 13294. And also in the Department of License Department here in Olympia, Washington. They're carrying the Zeppelin order. That's P.O. Box 903, Olympia, Washington 9850. And that is that's July, June, January, February, March, April, June, July, August 30th, 2019, 229. Letter ID is L00787402110. $35 for the drivers and final drive at the Department's License Department. The P.O. Box, and that's EPHRATA, the Moses Lake, Washington, and also the service they have applying the COVID-19 policy regulations. Mr. Andy Miller and his sheriff deputies, and also his staff at the prosecutor's office, 712 Assoka Place, Kenneth, Washington, 519-735-3591, fax 519-736-3066. Now applying the COVID-19, Mr. Andy Miller, Washington State Prosecutor, Mr. McKenna Law Office, John Luke Buchanan, WSBA 13294, and that's January 2022. Now, January 22, we have this sealed documents that's been biblical. That means by God, Jesus Christ Almighty. He has been, rectified and certified. This is January, February 8th of 2022. January 2022, January, February, the presidential primary election, and that's the services for Secretary of State, SOS Gov Corps, Steve Kim Wayman, and Secretary of State, applying hand-picked by Felix Barela and Jay Inslee and successors. Now in Kosovo and Iraq and Fallujah, and their services applying the war campaign, Mr. James Norman Manis, Mr. Alexander, and that's Mark Miley, Alexander DOT Department. of DOD, Pentagon, Mr. J. Mueller, Administration, the COVID-19 FBI Academy and FBI Services, and the CIA, Mr. Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, and that's Sandy Strawn from Benton County Justice Department. She runs her campaign commissioner's office locally. And the Pentagon Oval House and George Washington House in number 42 C Street, Northwest, P.O. Box 876. Alfredo Wash 98823. That's www.walklawfirm.com. That's CHADWICK.com. And that's 509-754-5264. Fax 509-754-5835. While www.walklawfirm, that's Kenneth W. Chadwick.com. That's online at Freddie Courthouse, Benton County Justice Department. 712 Mr. McKinnon Law Firm, Administration COVID-19. Now, Mr. McKinnon, he's a John Luke Law Professional, Luke Services, and that's 704 East Olive, P.O. Box 509-765-4451, 509-765-6019, McKinnonLawOffice.com, and John Luke McKinnon. You see that handsome man? It's a handsome man. That's John Luke McKinnon. That's James Norman Manus in the United States Marine Corps in Benton County Justice Department. Mr. Andy Milwaukee State Prosecutor's Office. The COVID-19 Policy Regulation 509-754-5264. George Washington House. We're serving 56 pages at the DHCPS office. They took the documents, of course. These titles and affirmative services, they've taken the documents. We got fresh documents, and we got those printed, embedded, and also on Facebook URL, and that's McKinnon Law Firms. We got fax machines. We got Office Max that comes locally, install their Windows and their services. We got internet service. We got 20 McFay's antiviruses. That's $150 for each McFay for $120. Unlimited devices, unlimited services. And McKinnon Law Office, a Microsoft company, number 11 Windows, 1110, and Windows 12. And that's the I-10, the I-11, 12, and 13, and the I-14. So those windows are embedded and printed in WSBA and the Washington Bar Association COVID-19 policy regulations. And that handsome man, it's a handsome man, ain't he? If you get the Facebook and the URL, John Luke McKinnon Administration, the Bar Association, embedded in. Embedded into the incomes of the society, the DOD, the Secretary of State, Social Security Office, and also the Washington Bar Association, Secretary of State, SOS/WAVGov, Steve Hobbs, Mr. Kim Wayman, Miss Kim Wayman at DOD, United States Army in San Fort Lewis Battalion, and also Mr. Kosovo, Iraq, DOD, Mr. Mark Miley Alexander, United States Army, George Washington, USS Washington, U.S. Abraham Lincoln, and also the services implying the COVID-19, the South Dakota Ordinances, Social Security Office at 8131, Klamath, Grand Ridge, Kenneth, Washington 993, commonly embedded. And Mr. McKinnon, that increments of the society, James Norman Manus, Mr. Alexander Mark Miley, DOD, and also Mr. Norman J. Manus has some pizza delivered and sent to Felix Barela, Mr. Andy Milwaukee State Prosecutor's Office, and also the retirement services they have, the George Washington House and George Washington Street, George Washington Way, Richland, and that's 825 Jadwin. 825 is the Federal Courthouse, U.S. Marshal Office, Patty Maris, Cantwell, and service COVID-19, applying the COVID-19 policy regulation and service to its utmost citizen services. Now, the society that carrying the COVID-19 policy regulations, they carry this administration on sealed documents as they carry this administration COVID-19 policy to implement a society, which is a screening process, which is mandatory in the services every way, shape, and nature. So you work for the DOL, Department of License, you got to work with Superior, Supreme Justice, and also the implying the society. Why? Because the screening COVID-19 policy regulation has been implemented on the self-service services applying the COVID-19 policy regulations because of the corruption, the war crimes that's been updated and screened at the executive order of the COVID-19 policy regulations. You got every right to protect yourself in every shape and form. You got every right to apply the COVID-19 amendment rights refuse to speak or sign signatures or do any kinds of the services, any police officer applying or abiding, making things up, because you're at the DOL, Department of License, and 5 days a week. You're at the EFT transaction, Social Security 5 days a week. You're at the agencies, at the banks and federal facilities. You got Visa, you got Giza, you got HAPO, you got the federal services, you got the business lines, you got opportunity and services, the COVID-19 policy regulations embedded in the commercial society, the DOL, proving your identity, your services, and applying the COVID-19 policy regulations because of Mr. Donald Trump, the executive order. He did that executive order because of the corruption and service implying the COVID-19. People misrepresenting themselves as police officers, state patrol officers, agencies, sheriffs, implying the COVID-19. Because you're right across the street and you have a agency across the street. You got your own house, dwelling services. You got McKenna Law Office Administration across the street, your McKenna Law Office online. You got faxes being purchases, McFay services, antiviruses, and also antivirus browsers, bank statements, and services McFays. You got 20 of them activated and submitting their service. You go to Office Max and download, submit all information. You go to the Verizon building and the Apple services implying the COVID-19, Apple apps implying the COVID-19, and that Google service implying the administration COVID-19 policy regulations. And you have no pornography, you don't have no child pornography, and you have no porno strips, and you have a main button stream that says not for children. You can block that feature and implying the COVID-19 because of the corruption. Because you have people that have failure peers, FTAs, you're at the Department of License, applying the COVID-19 policy regulations in person. You download, submit that information, you give them pay statements, you get credit card swipes, you get write out checks, and you write those checks to Confirmation Society of a confirmation agency that signs and implements and snapshots your hardware administration COVID-19 policy regulations to its utmost fittest and download them in commercial society. And on that service I'm applying the administration COVID-19 policy regulations service, the WSBA, and their service, which is McKinnon 13294 McKinnon. You know, Roberta Barela, Mr. John F. John F. Kennedy, the Kennedy Building, and Richland 825 Jadwin, and their service is corruption, and also Nancy Pelosi on eruption and COVID-19 policy regulation service, and Mr. Donald Trump that does lawsuits on the NFL Federation, NFL, AFC, and NFC, and he won that lawsuit, and he's still applying the COVID-19 policy regulations to service. This WSB, Mr. McKinnon, he's living proof, he's living witness. He's got his testimony, the J. Mueller's funeral home, the head plots, the ponds, the service, Connaught, the Wall Street increments of EFT transaction, also the buildings that they are structures. It says McKenna Law Firm on it. Now, those McKenna Law Firm has blades, they got equipment, they got fuel, unleaded fuel, got hydraulic fluid, you got John Deere, Evergreen, Moline, Illinois. You got Spudnets, Lotwoods, Harvesters, HTBs, you got 9560 RT tanks, and they have strips, maximum speeds 35 miles, and also the big boy. They implemented COVID-19, the John Deere, the Spudnets, the Scone, the Max Fields, the irrigation lines, the Rikens, and Rileys, and they got Rileys, Maxfields, and you got Scones. You got the washed potato plant, and also the Lamb Weston plant. You got the washed potato plant. You got also the Vons, Rosars, Albertsons, and all restaurants and gourmet services like Scone and Connor, producing the irrigation lines and water lines and services implying the COVID-19 policy regulation. You got domestic lines, water towers, and services of the HTO, which is ordinances that retain the ordinance of COVID-19 screening process of the executive order for each door of residents, door-to-door, USPs, prior mail, and also confirmation signature by FedEx, air-to-air, ground-to-ground, air-to-air, and door-to-door. That's agencies, buildings, federal offices, administration of COVID-19 policy and regulation and services.